Welcome in to another edition of the Fantasy Authority podcast. I am your host, Kevin Steele. I'm joined, as always, the wonderful, the great, the king of hedge life, Cody Kutzer. You can follow us on Twitter at FantasyWrath13. You can follow him on Twitter at CKutzerFF. You can also follow the TFA Twitter account at FF_authority. How's it going tonight, Cody?
Not too bad, man. Felt pretty good about taking Mason Rudolph under 31.5 pass attempts, and that does not look good as of right now. I think he's already at like 22 as we speak, but I already hit the over on James Conner's rush yards, so 50-50, half and half.
Yeah. I actually played this showdown slate, and I went heavy Dolphins because I knew that was going to be a contrarian build. And so far, it looks okay. So we'll see what happens here in the second half. But anyways, let's jump into what we're here for, and that is Week 9 waiver ads. The last week was a little bit more exciting. This week is a little I think people are probably a little down, actually, after some of their big waiver ads, right? Some people maybe went out and spent on Chase Edmonds if he was available, or Ty Johnson, and we got Belichick. And I mean, Ty Johnson in DFS, it doesn't matter where. Everybody was kind of wanting to play him, and as we know, not so good. So I mean, he went out. I mean, he did outsnap all the other running backs, but he just did absolutely nothing. Wasn't given much opportunity. And once again, that this kind of happens every year where there's players like this that become available, and that we all lose our minds to go and add. But we don't really know who the top waiver ad is on the week, right? And we kind of Wayne Gallman at least had one good week, I think, before he got hurt when the Saquon Barkley. But this one, I don't know what to make of it. Like, Ty Johnson is an athletic running back and everything, and like a lot of things aligned for him to get a much bigger workload. But we should have known when dealing with Matt Patricia to not trust it. So
yeah, I mean, it was still weird though, especially for Trey Carson to come out. They just claimed him off waivers like last week or something, and he comes out and gets that. So like that really didn't make any sense at all. But here we are. Fantasy football is a fickle bitch.
That it is, but I did see some people on Twitter say things like somebody asked a question like, well, "Who ruined your week?" and someone said, said Johnson. And I'm like, I don't know how bad your team is if you were relying on him and like he just killed you. Like you probably weren't going to win anyway, bud. But regardless, it is what it is. So let's go ahead and jump into Week 9. We do have 4 teams on bye this week: Saints, Rams, Bengals, and Falcons. This one has a little bit more implications where there's a lot more fantasy relevant players. Next week is a real big one. I think Week 10 is there's 6 teams on bye. So these next couple of weeks is kind of got to be pretty crucial for waivers, and hopefully you have enough depth. So let's go ahead and jump right into it this week with streaming quarterbacks. Last week I felt like we did pretty good. We were all over Derek Carr last week. I know we really liked Matt Stafford, but didn't know how much he was going to be available. So this week is another week to look at. Again, we have Derek Carr as probably the top, as probably maybe the top streaming option this week, going against the Lions. The Lions, especially with Matt Stafford, have been, at least a team that you can especially throw on. And I think this game has the potential to be high scoring. And so with Derek Carr, he's thrown multiple touchdowns and a lot of games this year. And I feel like that he is somebody that in a week where there's not a ton of like great matchups in terms of like streaming options, like this one feels like almost like a priority ad.
Yeah, if you're looking for a quarterback this week, he has to be the top one. Like you said, it's pretty thin across all positions. I mean, someone who Gardner Minshew, maybe you could look at, but he's 55% owned, but he does have Houston if you're looking for somebody there. I mean, other than that, like there's Sam Darnold, I guess, against the Dolphins. He started off that first drive pretty well on Sunday and then kind of went downhill from there. I mean, outside of that, man, it's pretty ugly. I mean, Jimmy G does get Arizona, but they're so run heavy, and you got to figure that they'll be able to get up on them and then just run the clock out like they've been doing every week. Outside of Carr, is there anyone else you'd be looking at?
I mean, Sam Darnold maybe going against Miami.
Yeah.
Like he was, I think he was okay this past week. I think he had 14 or 15, something like that, against the Jaguars. So this is a better matchup. I mean, although I will say tonight, the Dolphins are just playing out of their minds right now, leading in that, at halftime 14-10. So, that old Fitzmagic is going a little wild right now. But yeah, I mean, Sam Darnold against the Dolphins is a place you go. Like, we've kind of talked about this ad nauseum, I think, the last 3 or 4 weeks, as somebody that you can definitely add. This schedule now is at least over the next 6 or 7 weeks is just as good as you can get. So if he's really going to break out now, something to monitor here, which is good news, as the trade deadline is tomorrow, so you're going to know before it happens, before waivers would run. But if the Jets get stupid and trade Robbie Anderson, it hurts. That hurts his upside a little bit because Chris Herndon's out. You're talking about old man Demaryius Thomas and Jamison Crowder and stuff like that. So I mean, I guess Ryan Griffin did have 2 touchdowns last week, but that does hurt his upside a little bit. So, but I do like him. I would love to like Mitchell Trubisky, against Philly. We know they're a pass funnel. Their secondary is atrocious, easy to throw on. They have the weapons, but we just have not seen this him. I mean, he's just been awful. That's about as easy as way to say it. We know Matt Nagy yesterday just blew the game for that team. I don't know what they were doing with almost 50 seconds left in the game. Let's just run the clock out and let him rely on our kicker to make this field goal. And we know how that worked out. So you could go there. The other interesting one would probably be Cam Newton. He is available or only owned in 43% of leagues, of Yahoo leagues. And, at first everyone was kind of,
they already came out and gave Allen the start.
Well, okay. Well, so my point was with Cam would be, I feel like that if he struggles again, I do feel like I know some people thought he was going to get traded. I don't think that's going to happen. But if they go out and struggle like they did this past week, I think there's a real possibility that they go back to Cam Newton. And so with him being this widely available, and like I said, with a lot of teams on bye next week and then everything else, so we know, I think if he's 100% healthy finally and he can use his legs, he's somebody that I think is at least worth a look, because we know that they're still going to get to play the Falcons. They got the Bucks. They have some really enticing matchups that are going to be coming up. So like I said, where I was heading with that was if Kyle Allen continues to struggle as bad as he did against the 49ers, I think Cam Newton is at least somebody that's worth the look to stash.
Oh, yeah, for sure. I wasn't sure if you had seen that news that came out. But yeah, if you have the space and you want to stash him, like you said, Atlanta, New Orleans, Washington, Atlanta, Seattle, and then they finish out week 16 at Indy. So definitely a fantasy-friendly schedule there at the end of the year.
For sure. So, okay. So I think that's about it. Like I said, I think it's Derek Carr, Sam Darnold are definitely places you can go. If you want to get really risky, Mitchell Trubisky does make some sense. And then, Jimmy Garoppolo, I would love to play him, but like you mentioned, I definitely agree. They just don't have to really run the ball that much. So we haven't had to see him really open it up, and no team has really challenged them yet. And so until that happens, it's hard to really trust or play Jimmy Garoppolo with any sort of confidence. So I'd actually rather play probably Mitchell Trubisky over him. So for me, I would just rank them as pretty much the way I listed them: Carr, Darnold, and then Trubisky as waiver adds this week. So let's go ahead and move on to running back. We kind of already hit on the Johnson, whatever's going on there. Trey Carson is definitely widely available everywhere.
Yeah,
I don't know at this point if you can really trust him. I mean, what you think is going to happen. So, I mean, if you wanted to take a shot on Carson to see what happens, I think that's an option. We know Kenyon Drake was traded today to Arizona. So we're seeing this play out right now with Miami, where Mark Walton, I guess they said at the beginning of the game, Kalen Ballage was going to start, but they've really kind of mixed it in. But again, it's really tough to want to play any really Miami running back and expect much out of them, just because as bad as the team has been. Unless Fitzpatrick goes on a crazy run, kind of like he did last year with Tampa, it's really hard to really expect that. So, if you wanted to pick up Mark Walton, I'm sure he's widely available. Kalen Ballage, I know, is absolutely available. If you wanted to take a shot on one of them as just a bench stash to see if something were to kind of to see how things flake out. I think you could do that. But, who are you looking at running back?
It's ugly, man. It's pretty thin. I mean, I guess Darrell Henderson, he has been getting a bunch of touches over the past 2 weeks. You have noted here on the show sheet there was almost an even snap share last week, or I guess just yesterday against the Bengals. If you're looking for just like a 1 week streamer, pay attention to the practice reports coming out of San Francisco. If Breida is unable to play, they have the Thursday game this week. Raheem Mostert is only owned in 6% of leagues. I mean, outside of that, man, I guess maybe Rashard Penny. There was talk about him possibly being moved prior to the deadline. He's going to be available, so if he lands, I mean, I'm not even sure where would be a good spot for him to land. I guess Mark Walton, Kalen Ballage would be. I mean, they're going to be guaranteed touches, but just how many, and they're going to be splitting. So, I mean, if I'm picking up one, I guess I'm going to go Henderson, but it's ugly. It's pretty thin this week as far as running back goes.
Yeah, I do think Henderson is interesting just because of what's going on with Gurley, and now they are on bye this week, so that'll give Gurley a little bit of more time to rest up, and we'll see how things flesh out from there. Some of it was because Malcolm Brown has been out, the reason he's been getting so much, but there has been times when you see Henderson, you really see what they've seen in him. Like his burst is outstanding, but again, we've been saying it for the last couple of weeks, and it's what I've been doing, and it's what I advise everybody to do, and that is to add as many cuffs as you possibly can. We've said it, as many times as we can, but Alexander Mattison, Tony Pollard, Jalen Samuels, Rashad Penny would be another one who's widely available. Guys like that like I would much rather add those players than the other ones who are sort of like the Trey Carsons of the world, because we know that if something happens to their to the starter, those are going to be the guys who are, you don't have to question it. That those are going to be the guys who get the opportunity. And so those guys should be owned in far more leagues than they are. I don't understand the thought process behind them being this widely available. A lot of them are available in 60, 70% of leagues. And I just think that's silly. We've seen like Alexander Mattison, for example, he has every opportunity that he's been given. He has produced on the same level as like a Dalvin Cook. Now he's not getting the touches, so obviously the volume and the fantasy points aren't coming from it. But he's somebody that like in a pinch, if you absolutely had to, depending on matchup, like for example, this week against Kansas City, like you could start him if you wanted to. We know Kansas City has been absolutely terrible against the run. They did a decent job against Denver, but that's Denver. Last week, they weren't terrible against the run, but my goodness, whatever they were thinking with putting linebackers on Aaron Jones, and did not learn but once, but got it again twice upside the head with Aaron Jones last week. But so, somebody like Alexander Mattison going against the Chiefs defense that has really struggled to stop the run and really just contain running backs altogether, he could be somebody who gets, some looks, maybe finds the end zone. So, if you're desperate, especially and with a lot of the running backs are going to be on bye this week, or players that are on bye, like he's not a bad player to even think about, flexing.
Yeah. And then if you have the bench space to stash, Darius Geis is on track to return week 11, only owned in 29% of leagues. And once he returns, he has a pretty nice schedule to end the year. Obviously, you have to worry about Adrian Peterson and just that offense not being great to begin with. But week 11, he comes back. They have the Jets, Detroit, Carolina, Green Bay. Going up against Philly in week 15 isn't ideal, but then he finishes the fantasy season week 16 with the Giants. So, like I said, if you have the room to stash, Darius Geis might be someplace you can look.
Actually, that is a tremendous one. Actually, he's somebody that I would actually, of all the running backs, I would spend a decent amount of fab on him, and I would actually spend a high waiver priority to add him if he was somehow available, because I do feel like that once he becomes healthy, that he probably takes over as the lead back. That team's not going anywhere. You want to see what you got in him. There's no point in in continuing running out Adrian Peterson out there. So I do think that he is by far the most explosive running back they have. So yeah, it's actually a really good call.
Thank you.
So let's go ahead and move on to wide receivers. Again, not like anything that like overly stands out. Darius Slayton did have a nice 2-touchdown game this past week against the Lions. But I do think that, with Sterling Shepard could possibly return sometime in the next couple of weeks, that probably caps him a little bit. But he's definitely their deep threat. He has flashed some, and if I was in like a dynasty league or I don't know about a keeper league, but something like that, like he definitely seems like somebody who has some long-term potential. I've kind of liked what I've seen from him. Like he's what is this, his 4th touchdown, I think, on the season this past week. So, Darius Slayton is somebody that I think you can at least have somewhat, take a look at. Some of the other options are, Devontae Parker and Preston Williams are both widely available as well. Preston Williams has really started to build a rapport with Ryan Fitzpatrick, but who knows how long that's going to last till they turn back to Josh Rosen again. And then from there, Chris Conley has quietly put together some nice weeks. This past week, he had a 70-yard touchdown. And then I think Dede Westbrook left that game with an injury. So depending on what happens with that, Chris Conley could definitely be entering the number 2 wide receiver role there in Jacksonville. And I think, with as well as Gardner Minshew has played, Chris Conley is actually somebody who is someone as a decent flex option, wide receiver 4, wide receiver 5, on certain weeks, depending on matchups. And then, you have some other options like a Demaryius Thomas, who, I mean, we sort of talked about it. Like he's had in those last 4 weeks, he's had 2 weeks where he's had at least 9 targets. And then he's had a week where he had 4 and 5, 25 targets over the last 4 weeks. So they're trying to get him involved. And like I said, with this really awesome schedule they have coming up, like Demaryius Thomas at least has, again, as kind of another, depending on how deep your league is, but like a flex option at best. But, something like that is, who are you looking at wide receiver this week?
Love the Chris Conley call. Marquise Lee, not that he was really a factor in the offense, but he was getting snaps and he left injured as well. Alan Lazard has been playing pretty well. Only 15% owned. I think he's had the most routes run the past 2 weeks. And I mean, it's not like Allison has been playing all that well. So even with Adams coming back, if Lazard can work himself into like a 2A, 2B role, he might be somewhere you could look. I don't love it, but Deebo Samuel was second in snaps for the Niners behind Emmanuel Sanders. He played 70% of the snaps and then drops all the way down to Kendrick Bourne, actually played in front of Dante Pettis, and he had 48% of the snaps. So maybe they start getting something going more in the passing game and, can balance that out a little bit, because I'm pretty sure the Niners are leading the NFL right now, at least top 2, top 3 in rush attempts. So maybe with Sanders coming in, they can balance that out a little bit more. And Deebo, he had a rushing touchdown this past week. I think it was like 20 yards or so. And then pay attention to what happens with Brandon Cooks and his concussion. He suffered another one this past Sunday. They do have the bye, so you would think he'd be available come back week 10. But I see you had Josh Reynolds marked down here on the show sheet, so he could be a stash if you have the space. But obviously, you're not going to be using him this week.
No, for sure. I mean, I think it's just kind of a speculative. It's something I wouldn't really use a waiver add-on or anything else, but maybe just pick him up after waivers run. I don't think anybody's going to be running out to add him, especially with knowing that he's on bye. So, I think he's at least worth an add just to kind of see how things pan out there. Even if I was just a Brandon Cooks owner, I would at least take a look at that as some sort of insurance. But I think that's about it at wide receiver. Like I said, this wasn't a ton that really stood out this week. And then at tight end, again, Jonnu Smith was one that we really talked about last week with Delaney Walker out. He really had a pretty big game. this past week, at least for a tight end standpoint, right? I think he had like 80 yards and a touchdown. So it was good to see that. Now, if Delaney Walker is back this week, that kind of hurts his upside and appeal a little bit. But as of right now, Johnny Smith is only owned in 19% of leagues. So that's definitely a place you could go to. Noah Fant saw 8 targets this past week with now Manny Sanders gone. But, I guess now we don't have Joe Flacco. So who knows? Maybe that's a plus for the offense. After he came out with his pretty aggressive comments after the game about the team not being aggressive, which, I mean, I somewhat agree with, I guess, what he was saying. But at the same time, like, bro, you've been awful this year. Like, it's not like they're losing and it has nothing to do with you. Okay. Like, you certainly are part of the problem. But regardless of that, like, another terrible John Elway move. I think John Elway, in my opinion, is one of the worst GMs in football. He's just a name. But regardless of that, so he will not, obviously he's not starting. So Noah Fant will should go. And is Chris Herndon ever going to come back?
I don't know, man. I feel like we've been talking about him on the waiver show for, the past 3 or 4 weeks, and he has yet to show up. So, I mean, I haven't heard anything about the following weeks. You would think he was getting close because it sounded like he was close a week or two ago. But, I mean, if you need help at tight end this week, good luck, I guess, is the best way to put it. Johnny Smith would probably be the one I'd want to add, but like you said, you have to pay attention to if Delaney Walker is going to come back, and if not, like you can't trust Darren Fells. He's had a couple of solid games with his touchdown production, but you can't trust touchdowns as is, and let alone if you're trusting a touchdown coming from Darren Fells. So I guess if Delaney Walker is back, I guess Noah Fant would be the guy I'd be looking at. He did see the 8 targets with Manny Sanders out of the picture, but other than that, man, like I said, if you need tight end help this week, just put a couple names in a hat, pick one out, and then cross your fingers on Sunday.
Yeah, I think that's a pretty fair argument, especially with, because, at the very least, Austin Hooper owners are going to be looking for a tight end. Maybe if you've been running out Jared Cook, or I guess you haven't been worried about him. He has been out for the last couple of weeks, but, Gerald Everett, something like that. But, I don't think anybody's rostering Tyler Eifert. That's the name that was escaping me. But regardless of that, yeah, it's just been we say it every year. It's just so bad for tight ends, really.
Yeah.
Now, who knows? Maybe we get a big trade tomorrow, and it kind of shakes some things up. So that'll certainly be something to monitor for the rest of this week, because we really could get something that opens up that we really weren't expecting. Maybe Joe Mixon gets traded, and all of a sudden Gio Bernard looks pretty appetizing, or there's all different things that I think that could happen. Possibly Rashad Penny. There's been talk about teams reaching out to them to seeing if he's available. So, the sad part is that that the trade deadline happens. It'd be better if the trade deadline was like Thursday, but just because we're going to know what happens, and so that's really going to change most of the waiver priorities and what people are going to want to do. Because if one of those things happen, like, I don't know, let's say the Chiefs traded for Rashad Penny, which certainly could happen, because right now they have a bunch of running backs and none of them have really stood out. So, but something like that, I think that could really shake up the landscape where one of these players just becomes a must add. So we'll just have to monitor that. So if you want to monitor that with us, you can head on over and join our free Slack channel that we have going on right now. It is absolutely free. All you have to do is reach out to us on Twitter, and we will get you in there. We have a redraft. We have a DFS room. We have a dynasty room. So we have all different kinds of channels in there to talk about fantasy football, talk about whatever you want. And, I think last week we brought up the idea of maybe starting a dating website or something like that, for fantasy football related. I don't know. We got all kinds of things in the works. But so I think that's about it for this week. Again, if you have any questions, always reach out to us, whether it's on Twitter or through Slack, and we will get you taken care of. And you got anything else this week?
I don't, man. looking forward to recording tomorrow and looking forward to week 9.
Yeah, we will be back again tomorrow for another live show. We are bringing back the dynamic duo of Ryan and Nate one that we had last week. We enjoyed it so much we decided to bring them back again. So we will have them on again tomorrow for our main show. So just hit us up and be back tomorrow night. If you have any questions, feel free to hit us up.
Yep, that's it, man.
let's just go ahead and head out of here. So yeah, I don't know what I was doing there. Just got sidetracked. Anyways, it happens. I saw a shiny object. I was like, ooh, lost my train of thought. So anyways, I hope everybody has a great night, and let's see what happens here. I don't know. Maybe Ryan Fitzmagic has a little bit of magic left in him and pulls out the dub over the Steelers, which would ruin Cody's night as a Steeler fan. So anyways, we will see you again tomorrow night. Have a great night. Peace.